My true definition of wealth, particularly looking at it from a stokvel perspective or from a social club perspective, it is a place where a group of people use Ubuntu. They come together in order to achieve a certain goal. Nothing is better than achieving a goal together. If you look at many forms of sports, when a person scores a goal, they celebrate it together. That's where wealth is mostly achieved. And this is what stokvels bring. It brings the ability to take a little that you have and achieve immense wealth together. That's where I see the social clubs or investments called stokvels going. My own definition of true wealth, it actually varies based on the time variable, So I look at wealth from a 3 dimension. You start wealth between when you're young, and there's a wealth in the middle phase, and there's a wealth at the end of your life, right? I'm perhaps transitioning between middle towards the end, right? And I hope the end is very far. But if I look at it and I add a layer of a mindset as well, when you're young and you have a wealth mindset of a young person, and particularly, let's say, for example, when I was growing up, I used to imagine a lot, and the wealth is connected to the imagination. I would grab a brick and imagine it's a car and driving around as I was growing up, and that gave me joy. So that particularly point in time is not associated with any monetary. It's a wealth of joy, a wealth of happiness. But when you move into the middle side of it, then you associate wealth with an individual achievement. I want to be number 1 in the company. I want to be number 1 at school, or I want to be number 1 in this specific industry. But as you transition towards the elder part of your life, you start realizing that wealth is actually about giving or serving others, and there you get more immense wealth, because again, if you take it back to the social club perspective, wealth is when we all achieve instead of being an individual achieving. And that's my sense of wealth from a 3-dimension perspective. You only make wealth an end goal when you understand, and you try to understand what wealth is, and that's when you start to say, okay, wealth has to be an end goal, because through you, others achieve, basically, and perhaps it talks back to the history of our country, how wealth has not been passed on from generation to generation. And even within the stokvel industry itself per se, you quite find it difficult where an old stokvel, whether it was a burial stokvel, has not passed on that baton to the younger stokvel. They tend to shy away from it, although I think it's changing at the present moment. So wealth is perceived or taken part when you see it, when it gets transferred. And I think that's where the challenge has been, basically, from transferring wealth from generation to generation. But hoping that with stokvels or with social clubs, it will start to change, basically, as more young people start to use technology, which is what we do from that perspective, provide the technology for the social clubs and stokvels to be a better forming stokvels, better admin stokvels. Then they'll become part to realize that actually we can achieve more using this platform. I think no one has a unique idea. I think we all think of the similar or same idea. Is how we implement the idea that makes it a wealthy idea from that perspective, right? So my perception has always been changed by how I implement something. And you could argue maybe it's because of the engineering background. You look at something, you say, okay, different processes, different things to make it more efficient perspective. And that's where perhaps my impact of wealth got impacted by my supervisor at that point in time. His name is Professor Andre Nell. One time I sat down with him during my master's, while I was doing my master's, and he said to me, Tshepo, what do you want to do? And I said to him, look, I want to be the best. At that point I was thinking about the middle part of the world, to being the best. He says, if you want to be the best, then you have to work with the best, basically. So wherever you are, surround yourself with the best, from that perspective. So the perception of wealth at that point in time in journey was impacted by being the best. But right now, my influencer now is more pivoted towards a spiritual perspective, towards a higher power perspective. And in there, of course, it's influenced by my spiritual leader, saying, okay, Tshepo, how do you see yourself serving? How do you see yourself giving back from that perspective? And therefore, that's a different perception of wealth, totally. Failure is an indicator that you're going somewhere. I guess that's the first important part about failure. It's that it shows you that you're doing something, and if you don't fail, that something that you're doing has been done before. arguably because you already know the steps in order to do it. So failure for an entrepreneur is a very pivotal part of learning from that point of view. And the more you learn, the more wealthy you become from a knowledge perspective. Now you start to understand that I should not do that, I should do this. I mean, Alexander Graham Bell really failed many times before he got to the other side of his invention, and he didn't say, I failed. He said, I found multiple ways of not to do it. Therefore, other people can learn not to do it the way I've done it. And that's a great way of looking at it as an entrepreneur, is you are charting the way of other for an unknown path for other people to say, oh, this is how we should not do it in order to get to an output that's more wealthy for them. My perception of wealth and its end goal has changed, and it's arguably based on where I am in my life. So at the moment, I'm in the transition of saying, how do I give back? And even within the company, we ask ourselves, what is our ultimate vision? And our ultimate vision is to assist all to build wealth together the simple way, and understanding that, to say, okay, how do we do that? How do we make sure that every person that comes on our platform actually gets the ability to do more with what they have or the little that they have? So that's where the perception of mine is changing in terms of wealth, especially having a little daughter as well, to say, okay, here's a little one who's making me think differently and says, look, Daddy, I can do that. Although I say no, but her answer is yes. And the answer is yes, just shows you that actually we put barriers in our lives in order to achieve things, where someone who's as young as that does not know the barriers. So my ultimate goal as a father is to say, how do I make sure that I don't put those barriers? How do I make sure that she sees the other side of a yes, being a yes, you can do it, with calculated risks, of course. When people think of a stokvel or social club, investment club, and depending which part of the African continent you are in, East Africa, Susu, West Africa, Chalmers, so it's called different things, but I use the same output. They think of this informal market of a group of old people under a tree, swapping money together. And the truth is that the stokvel itself, industry, has evolved with time. It's just the instruments that have been using have not evolved with time. And this is where us as a company, StokFella, comes in. We provide the instrument that assists them to evolve with time, from that perspective. So what does that mean from a simple stokvel, or for a simple individual who's part of a stokvel? It means now that you are now taking control of your stokvel, not only from a friendship perspective, not only from a neighbor perspective, but you're taking control in terms of making it part of the economy. And this is where StokFella plays a very important part, because if you think about stokvels, they're a decentralized model, right? And being decentralized, and we talk about this 50 billion rand industry, is actually in small pockets, right? So it can't have a major impact on the economy if it's not centralized and it's not focused on maybe 2 or key 3 industries. So for example, on our platform, we have these are the 3 stokvels which are quite big on the platform. One wants to become a bank, the other one wants to own farms, the other one wants to own property. Now these stokvels are key in a very important part of the industry. Why I say that? Because property, arguably, people want property, people can't afford property, and therefore the stokvel is playing a very important part in making that a dream come true for its members. Then you have a stokvel that says we're going to do farming. The truth is that farming is the lifeline of any country. Right? And it says, look, people need to eat end of the day. So by eating, and our members need to eat, let's do something that will provide that wealth to them. And then of course the banking side. And the truth around the banking side is that most economies, if you look at them, the most successful ones have cooperative banks, have multiple small banks across its country, which allows the money to circulate within that specific community. And that's what the stokvel is trying to do. It's saying, let's become a small bank so that the money can circulate within us. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that allows you to, one is to be shielded from arguably the world economy that's going upside down now and then, but also allows you to now feed back into the community. And that's arguably what makes stokvels great. They allow that circulation of money to happen. They allow that you to impact a certain industry. They allow you to see more than just yourself as an individual. Stokvels provide multiple options depending where you are in your life. So let's take the example of someone who works in a low income earning job and who happens to contribute 100 Rand to their stokvel for the past 5 years or so, and suddenly they lose their job. Now what has happened, the stokvel now realizes this member has lost their job. They might have a certain constitution on how to say, how do we then make sure that from this kitty you've contributed, we then make sure that you are able to eat as a family, your family. One, you could have been the only breadwinner from their perspective, but two, we provide you with some sort of funding in order for you to go look for another job, because we know that in order for you to find another job, you need to spend money. You catch a taxi, you use internet, data, and so forth. This all costs money. This is where the stokvel can step in. So it's not only about a social, should I say, it is about social club as well. And social is Ubuntu, is helping each other during tough times, basically. So some people can say, use your stokvel as an income protector, basically. And income protector means if I don't have something, there's this safe haven that I know I can count on. Or if I'm no more breadwinner at home, there's a safe haven that I know I can count on. That's where it helps. But then if you take it maybe a up level, if you want to define things in LSMs, maybe LSM 8, 9, or 10, you're looking at stokvels of people who say, look, we have a bit of more money. We can put more than 100 Rand. We could put 10,000 Rand away per month. And in that instance, what do we achieve? This is now a different ballgame totally. You're looking at a stokvel that says, okay, how do we then say, impact the social economy? And what I mean about that, for example, if we take AfriForum, arguably you can argue it's a stokvel. People are contributing to it. They're building a university, So that's a kind of different stokvel that looks at the social imbalances of the country, of the world, and says, how do we as a stokvel fix that? And I think in South Africa, we're starting to need more of those stokvels that look at the social imbalances and say, okay, if we put money together, we can fix those social imbalances. If we put money together, we can hire a group of lawyers to go look at regulation. Maybe regulation is a big stumbler for us, but regulation, to change it requires advocates, it requires money, so a stokvel that now looks at it differently, So load shedding is an example. A stokvel that says, look, how do we make money from load shedding? Perhaps let's put solar panels across all our roofs. Solar panels cost money, but if you put money together and we buy it in bulk, it could be cheaper. So there's multiple ways, depending where you are in your life, a stokvel can have an impact. Wealth is an enabler of happiness. I think it's an enabler of comfort. Let's start it there. So wealth as an enabler of comfort, meaning that one, if you look at it from a monetary perspective, am I comfortable enough, wake up one day and I know my money is working for me? So that's the first layer of wealth from there. Well, from a happiness perspective, it cannot be, because happiness is defined as feelings, defined as the time that you spend, basically. So if we're looking at happiness, you almost want to separate it from there. So to me, happiness is, am I spending my time the best way I can? Because I can't get my time back. No matter what, every individual human on this world, in this earth, has the same amount of time. The same. We all have 24 hours. It all depends how long you sleep as a person. We all have a certain sleeping pattern. All right. So your hours and your time, you cannot get it back. So I would equate time and happiness. And if you say, well, I'll say, okay, it creates an enabler of comfort for me at that position. But for someone else, wealth could be knowledge. As a company at StokFella, it's important for us to continue our work that we are doing, because our work inspires hope and belief in a stokvel that could have just been a typical grocery stokvel, and that's all they know how to do. But our work goes more beyond than just providing a platform. Yes, the platform is a means for you to be efficient, but our work is to inspire the stokvel industry and to inspire a small stokvel to say you can do more with the little capital that you have, and more does not need to mean that you need to take big risks, but more is being a bit more smarter. More is to say, okay, right, within our leadership, right, do we have certain skills? Do we not do bricklaying? Maybe there could be, maybe construction is starting to boom. And you say, okay, let's pay for bricklaying within our members. So where StokFella plays its important role is to inspire stokvels, is to give them that ability to realize what are the key skills that they're missing in order to become a better and a more powerful stokvel. Is to give them inspiration and a hope to say, this is the best way to do it. And yes, use the platform, of course, because the platform enables you to do that quicker, faster. If I were to send a message to a young person, is I would think about it this way. When you leave varsity, and you say you're going to take on the world, remember this about you. Especially if you're coming from an impoverished background or where families doesn't have much, right? You are actually an asset. You are that family's asset. They've invested in you from that perspective. So if something happens to you, then the family has lost. And that's how I thought about it. I mean, I remember when I stepped out of varsity and I got my first job, I looked at my mom said to me, yeah, wow, I've put so much in you. You're almost there. You're already. And I'm like, she's sacrificed so much for me to be here. So if anything happens to me, God forbid, I pass away or something, the asset is gone. So you being the asset, then that's where arguably life insurance comes in, right? So insure yourself in order to make sure that spending that your family has done does not go to waste. But of course, you put measures into it, like your will and how it's supposed to be spent, so that it enables them to get out of poverty, if they're in poverty, into a better place. So my advice to any young person that's starting is consider yourself as an asset up until you've immense wealth that's more than you as a person, whether it's shares, whether it's property, whether it's a business. But when you start as a young person and there's nothing at home, you are the asset. So protect the asset.